I just want to mention to the other panelists who are still on, if you're still with us and you're in a position to do so, why don't you flip your video on and we'll open up for a broader set of conversations now. Josh, absolutely for you. Ryan, outstanding. Rich, Drew, good stuff. I just want to start with Katie, but this might be a good question for everybody. I think a lot as we do design thinking about how it contrasts with how we're ordinarily taught to run a meeting, have a conversation, invite people to chime in. And where I usually find myself ending up on that is we aren't taught to do those things. It's a thing that we just kind of have to figure out. And there isn't, you know, it's military, we have doctrine for everything. There isn't really doctrine for that. And this is just kind of an easy way, in the same way that social etiquette is easy, to make sure that everybody gets a chance to chime in and overcoming some of our usual biases. Have you had the same experience? Is it powerful for you because it's going from zero to something? Or what do you think there? Katie, maybe you could take it away, and then anybody else, if you want to throw a finger up or something, we'll kick it over to you.
Sure. I do think that there's a big difference between running a meeting design thinking style and running a meeting in a more traditional way. And, you know, as I mentioned, what I like about it is that it allows people to take a moment and pause and think, especially if you do the style where people write down their individual responses, say on a sticky note, you can think about it, you can edit it, and then you share. Not only does it appeal to the introverts in the group, but from a diversity and inclusion perspective, I think it's a really good way, especially if you have, you know, women and minorities in the group who often will pause before raising a question or might hesitate whether this is, and start to evaluate things right away, as opposed to some people just go forward and blurt it out. And so this is a way to ensure that all voices are heard, as opposed to just the loudest.
Can I chime in?
Please.
I would say there's an old quote that has always kind of stuck with me that is from John Boyd again. He said that what's doctrine one day is dogma the next. And I think that when you're talking about problems where there's a very, very clear and concise sort of frame of what the problem is and a clear pathway forward, it's, you know, it makes a lot of sense to use our traditional sort of approaches. But when you're dealing with something where functional fixedness is potentially a problem and the problem set isn't really clearly scoped and you really don't have a clear way forward, that's where you almost need to decentralize that vision and as a team come up with a different approach.
I'll say a quick something. With design thinking, absolutely modular. It's applicable on the fly, like a lot of people have talked about today. You can adjust the techniques that you've learned to fit the capability. So Rose Thorn Bud is a great feedback tool. It's also a great way, as Katie was saying, to have solicited feedback on a specific issue or problem, you know, identify culture concerns. But yeah, that's the, and all of those have just been, well, again, enlightening to me as a newer practitioner in the field. And of course, I'm still learning how they all work.
Drew, Pat, Vinny, let me add a little bit of a twist to that also and say that we usually talk at the Centers for Adaptive Warfighting at the CAW about how there are different kinds of problems in the world. And some problems our usual methods are good for, and some problems, if you're going to attack them, this is probably the set of tools that you want to use, right? And it would be interesting to hear a little bit about the flags that you look for when you say, oh, this is the thing I should probably use design thinking for rather than one of my usual utensils, whatever this meal might be. Drew, you want to take it away first?
Yeah, I think you nail it. And this is definitely not you know, the tool that solves every problem. And I think that we, especially in the military, have trouble context switching. We're primed to execute, and we're often very much in an execution mode. And in execution mode, hierarchy can work. It can be extremely efficient. You see, if you just look at the natural life cycle of most businesses, they start with an extremely flat structure, and that flat structure enables them to design and develop and iterate on their products and ideas and adapt to the market shifts very, very quickly. But look at the most established companies, and many of them have fully defined exactly what their value is and how they are going to develop that and migrate it into this hierarchical structure. So being able to identify which context you're in and what the set of tools are to enable the best performance in that context is hugely important. And design thinking certainly lends itself very well to those types of problems where you're in the design space and you have something that you need to figure out. And especially if you have a broad or diverse audience to bring to bear against that problem. Known problem, known solution, go execute is a very different sort of thing.
Rich, did you want to expand on that? And then I want to kick it to Pat or Vinny or Josh to make sure that the folks who aren't usually the first into the fray still get into the fray.
Yeah. What I was going to say is that a lot of the reason that large organizations are more hierarchical has something to do with a number called Dunbar's number. There's actually a number of, it's about 150. If you look at Mennonite communities, Amish communities, or small organizations, even military units that are under about 150 people, they're able to operate with a flat org structure because that's the maximum number of loose personal connections an individual can have, just about 150. There's a company, the company Gore-Tex, for example, when they build their factories, they literally only put 150 parking spots in each of the parking lots, and then they just build a new building each time the parking lot gets full and people start parking on the lawn. That's true. But that's part of the reason why that is the way it is. We have a question too I want to direct to Katie. What is your vision for scaling these practices across the IC?
That's a great question. The three areas of focus for my team are skills, incentives, and implementation. So how can we help educate people, whether they're already practiced innovators or the innovation curious, and help them upskill and feel more confident in this. The incentives are how can we ensure that there are explicit and kind of more subtle incentives in place, whether that's helping people use these design thinking skills and be rewarded in terms of promotions or in terms of their annual assessment, but then also how do we help nudge people who might traditionally be a little reluctant to support innovation to be more enablers of it. And then the third is that implementation side. So how do we help people get from idea to the finish line? And then what we've noticed is when something gets implemented in one of the IC elements, they want to use it for mission purposes, which is absolutely fabulous. But then how do we make sure that it gets shared and replicated across all of the parts of the intelligence community? So that's why my team is working on all three of those, not just with the skills. And so we have a whole bunch of things going on in all three areas, ranging from creating an innovator's toolkit that's available for people. So that's easy access to training materials, templates, things that can help them go faster and go bigger on their efforts. Setting people up with mentors or with people who are offering to teach the skills that they themselves are seeking. So we kind of have a skill offers and asks meeting place called the Oasis that we're building. And so we're working on different sample language to help so that people can get rewarded for innovative activities in their annual assessments, and then really helping to lift and shift and pivot and franchise things as they succeed in one area so that they can be shared across the community. We're a small team, and so we're really working with people from all over the intelligence community and the broader national security community like you guys, which is why I'm so excited to be here and connect with you all.
One team, one fight, right? CAW team, does that Daniel Holter, who by the way is a Air Force, actually I would say DoD innovation royalty from out in Hawaii. Daniel, so glad you're here with us. And good to have some enlisted representation in the comments. CAW team, do those sound familiar, those ways of thinking about the road ahead?
The shaping the road, is that what you're hinting at? How we're going to move forward, John?
Skills, incentives, scaling, franchising. Ryan, I see you nodding over there.
Yeah, and oh, I'm sorry, and that goes to like the second question that was asked there, like, and how do you get this started in an organization? And I'll go back to last week when Colonel Lyons was talking about it and his innovation leadership course. That it's not so much the idea, it's not so much the process. It is the confluence of the people that are willing to do it to drive the adoption of a new practice in a community. So it's really difficult to do this alone. And so being able to see these disparate teams all kind of working towards the same goal with a common framework, but like as this insurgency and these cells that are able to work together is what it's going to require to move this into common practice, I think, in the DoD, which is sorely needed. And it has room everywhere, so there's no reason not to, but it will require effort for the coalition of the willing.
And I would add to that one commonality across everybody, I think, who's been on the CAWcast today and is on any of our CAWcasts, is the idea that change is led by those who show up and that tools should be available for them to do that. Skills, incentives, some theory about scaling, pretty standard for developing products. There's special things in our world that make that possible. Time, trust, top cover, and the ways that Colonel Shelton was talking about the last time he was on here. If you've been to any of the lean startup courses that are offered across the IC or the National Science Foundation or the Hacking for Defense program, you're going to hear a lot about, and you should. Training isn't enough. It doesn't matter if people know how. They need to have space to run. They need to have backup. They need to be told that it's all right to scratch the car. Don't get DUIs, but go scratch the car and spend some time on something that matters and put puppies on it while you're at it. Because by gosh, we're going to have fun while we're here. But it takes the whole team, right? It takes leadership and the things that only leadership can do and their understanding of how to employ these capabilities. It takes people who want to show up and try something new and contribute to the water so there's more to drink down the road. And worth highlighting that everybody on this call and everybody who's supporting it in the background and helping to run the Centers for Adaptive Warfighting or over at with Vinny at the Inter-American Defense College or with Katie at OD&I, it's teamwork makes the dream work, right? There's no one person who can carry this stuff, and we can shape the runnels all we want, but if nobody shows up, you're not going to get there. And it takes all three of those things: sweat equity, a theory of change that people can carry forward themselves, and something for leaders to do in making sure that folks have space to run.
So I'd like to just add, given the context of where I'm at, what I found in terms of, human-centered design, at least as I understand it, is essentially I've got to recognize that all the new staff that come to the college are not going to be open to do that publicly in front of leadership in the beginning. And so very much like how diplomacy works, where, it's funny that people joke about FAOs, just their job is just to drink, go to cocktail parties and drink. The reality is when everybody has their guard down, that's when you can do negotiation, you can do building of relationships. And so the same is true, in the formal meetings, you don't touch those, you leave those alone. And it's on the sidelines that you do this kind of work, you introduce this kind of thing, which I've actually found people are hungry to learn about because, they're in a new environment. And so even if there's an apprehension in terms of rank in the beginning, over time, as they participate and offer their thoughts, they buy in. But the point about, so that's one thought I'll offer, which is, don't mess with the formal structure when it's absolutely necessary. But in working groups, dig into this. And then the second thing was the top cover is key. The leadership basically saying, yeah, go try it out is pivotal.
Josh, Rich, you want to drive that next question? I see logistics in it, and I think to myself, I know who's going to take this one.
The logistics was the example, but to get to that one, yes, we use any of these processes to improve processes and some of these things. The answer to that is yes. There are some organizations, I believe, across the DoD that have used this, have actually implemented it into their curriculum development. MCC I believe, may be looking to do that as well in the near future. Myself, I've used these tools within my organizations to improve our own internal processes in order to get our teams, again, collaborative effort on things. I'd like to hear what my, coworkers want to do and how we're going to do things and attack problem sets as a team. And especially with logistics, it's a wide field. I'm a logistics guy, but I'm not an expert in motor transportation or supply management, or I need all of them to collaborate together and we all come up with a great solid plan together in order to go forward. So yes, we've definitely used it for a lot of process improvement. And I've heard of other organizations that are really starting to embed this into their daily lives, which is great. I think it's great. Who else? Hopefully that answered the question we had there. The next question up is how is anyone using design thinking in our current environment, which is a very tricky question to do. And I think some of us are dabbling around with that with some of the different tools out there right now. Mural being one of them. I don't know if we can pitch some other things, but John, you got a couple others, I believe.
We run into a lot of folks who are experimenting with new ways of doing this. I mean, I think it's the essence of change that it also comes with opportunity. Necessity is the mother of invention, right? And not only, as it turns out, are we all teleworking by and large, but so is everybody else, right? Which actually makes it easier to communicate in a variety of ways. And the meetings that are canceled, the spaces that people are usually in that forbid certain kinds of communication. And now even informally, you can sort of spitball about stuff, and the opportunity, the aperture is much wider for spending time on how might we questions, right? Which often end up being the most powerful and should come at the beginning of any process anyway. I would be curious to hear if any of our other panelists have found opportunities to apply design thinking in particular for this crisis. I know that as we were, I spoke yesterday at the Defense Innovation Network innovation talks. I think former commandant was on right after me, General Neller, about how in this crisis, what you want to do in any situation of complex uncertainty, to your point from earlier, Drew, is figure out what the center is, the feedback that you're responding to in order to make your way forward. The lights are switched off. You don't know what the rules are, what moving forward looks like, who you're supposed to be serving, how you're supposed to be doing it, how you measure success. You got to try something, and you have to have someone to serve in order to do that, because if you're not making a difference for somebody, what's the point? So the process of figuring out who are the people who need N95 masks, how do they usually get access to them? How is supply constrained at this moment? What exactly, if we're making a wallet for somebody, to Katie's excellent point from earlier, what do they need that wallet, or in this case, that mask, to do? And what are the constraints on it? And if we're thinking about something that could be manufactured rapidly and cheaply at scale across the country based only on a technical data package, who are the players there? How do they get access to those? And how do you scale up production in response to the orders we received recently in order to make sure that the people who have it, need it, have it in the time that they need it, in the format that they can use, in a way that helps them to make the maximum possible difference? And how do you go ask them what that wallet needs to look like in order for it to maximally serve them? But it certainly needn't only be in response to COVID. I wonder what other folks are doing in these moments to take advantage of these techniques and this opportunity.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that actually. I think one of the silver linings of the situation we find ourselves in is that people are really thinking about others more. So for the first time in a long time, when someone says, "How are you doing today?" that you're not supposed to just say, "Oh, I'm fine, thanks, how are you?" Like, it's an actual question, which is really nice. And so that gives people more freedom to talk to each other and really ask about, really, you don't have to say fine, like, what's really not working. And so that's kind of what you're doing for an interview for design thinking anyway, is really learning about people and empathizing with them and creating a safe place for them to talk about where things could be better, and where those gaps are. That's where innovation is. And I think also because so many people are working remotely, we get a bit more insight into them as humans, because when we're in the office, it's a bit more of a sterile environment. We're in our business clothes or in uniform, especially for your case. And they're kind of standard issue cubicles, standard issue offices, and you choose what you share with people. Whereas now, we're looking at each other's backgrounds and people notice the triathlon medals or whatever it is, or you see someone's kids running around in the background or their cat, and it gives people the freedom to be more of themselves. And I think we need people to bring their whole selves to the problem always, because that's where you get the really innovative ideas and that lateral thinking, and people feeling comfortable applying all of their knowledge and not just their current role or their current rank. And so I think that because we're allowing ourselves to be human and to appreciate ourselves as really diverse and vibrant people, that we'll be able to accomplish a lot more than if we had been kind of stuck in our cubicles. So that is some semblance of a hopeful note to end on that.
Oh, that is awesome. I know we're coming to the end here, so as the fuzzy fledgling innovation chick, I would love to hear what those of you who have fully grown feathers and expanded your design thinking wingspans, like what's been so intoxicating for you? Like, why does this process work? Do you have any specific experiences that you could quickly share, just in a quick round robin with everybody?
Can I chime in first? I would say the biggest takeaway that I've had is that there's an ebb and flow to each of our individual careers and each of our individual developments. But at a certain point, the work that you are working on and the efforts that you're involved with become larger than you as an individual. And at that point, you basically are able to step back and foster the development of others. So as you go along, the biggest thing to focus on is how do we scale? And the way that we scale is by being selfless and not caring who gets the credit.
Yeah, Rich.
Maybe somebody who hasn't spoken in the last few minutes for the next one.
I couldn't agree with you more, Rich. I'm sorry. I'm going to jump in real quick on that. One of the things that I feel, I don't really feel like I've ever grown fully mature feathers. I think that part of this process opens up the value of continuously being a beginner and being open to learning and understanding things in a light you haven't seen before. So I think that's a big part of it. Embracing that it's okay to be a beginner. It's okay to continue to look and reach and learn in the way that you probably did when you were much younger.
So I just wanted to add that from our perspective, seeing the fruits of your labor be realized almost instantaneously when people get on board. And I say that with COVID-19 in mind, because we've had to restructure the way that the director receives and gets information. And really, it's to the end, it's so that the students that come to the college have the information they need to protect themselves and feel like they're still getting their education. So it's really rewarding to see it happen so fast.
Katie, Dave, Josh, briefly.
Sure. For me, it's been a great way to always stay curious and approach every new situation as one that's a bit more zen. Like, I don't really know how it's going to turn out, and I'm excited to find out.
Real quick, for me, one of the things that I love about getting involved in anything is that people succeed in problems they've been struggling with, especially when they did it faster in a way that they didn't know they could. And seeing that success, they go hold of by using the design principles. Can you guys hear me? But
I think we're coming in broken here, Dave.
can you hear me?
Yeah. I'm going to put you back on mute with
Sorry
regret.
about that.
Connection is weak there. Josh, you want to close us up on that question?
I used the, you know, I came into the design thinking, I think it was back in October, maybe before that, I'm not even sure. Met Brandon and John and got put through this class, did some mountain exercises. And after being in the military almost 20 years and then seeing this, it was like, wow, you know, just this teamwork thing is being presented in a very easy method with throwing a bunch of stickies on the wall and letting everybody have a voice and leadership, hearing those voices, putting ideas and plans together. I was like, this is a great tool. Been looking for it forever, like something just simple. Because I'd like to, you know, have a team that works together and get things done, and everybody gets a chance to say something, and I just embrace it and enjoy it and love it. I do use it. I use the stickies and do a logistics plan to figure out how am I going to move from A to B and feed it and fuel it and do all the other fun stuff. And again, I don't have the answers, but a lot of other people do. And even down to the lowest, the highest level, everybody has a vision and a viewpoint from different areas, and hearing what they see or what they experience and bringing that and putting that plan together. It creates a great plan, and very fast too, very rapid. You can get a plan together. So yeah, definitely use it, love it. Works great with logistics. I know that.
We have a picture we keep at the office of a sticky note of feedback from one of the junior Marines in one of the larger sessions we ran. We try to get feedback every time we do anything. And we'd ask, how'd this go, right? We got 60 of you in here. We got 20 of our students, and the students are practicing these facilitation skills on you. Write what you think is going on, write how this feels on a sticky note, put it on the ground, and we'll collect them afterwards. And we did. And one of them said, in pretty classic Marine Corps block lettering, it feels like it's actually possible to make a difference in the Corps. And others said things like, we got to talk today and somebody cared what we had to say. And moments like that, that feeling, first of all, and it being possible anytime, any place, you just kind of step onto the mat and use these tools, and you can help people to communicate that well together. That's worth it on its own. But I think it's also, at least for me, a pretty powerful reminder when we have the opportunity to use these tools, that's why a lot of people join the service or come into federal government service in the first place, is because they care about other people. You know, you say, I'm here for the mission, but most of the time what we mean is, I'm here because I want to make a difference for somebody. I think there's somebody who depends on me and I can do something about that. And it's tremendously moving for me when we have senior officers, 06s facilitating for lieutenants, or we got 04s and 05s facilitating for anybody else, senior enlisted, junior enlisted as well. And they're looking at people who they wouldn't ordinarily ask, like, how you doing today? How do you think we should do this differently? What am I missing, even though I outrank you, about how to think about this, or what could make the road ahead a little more clear? And they really desperately want an answer. And the people they're talking to know that. And those moments, the click, as it becomes clear that that's the case, and the enthusiasm with which people throw themselves into that breach is such a powerful reminder of why we're all here. It bowls me over every time.